Hi everyone, welcome to a very special video. Now, as you all know, I'm a massive James Bond fan. And with only 1 week to go exactly until we are in the cinema waiting to see those white dots go across the screen. 007 Bond is back. Finally, after almost a 6-year wait since Spectre, with all the production problems that happened whilst they were preparing to writing the film, then making the film, then obviously COVID happened. But today, I'm here to talk about just one thing. Now, if you know where to look, then you can find the No Time to Die soundtrack by Hans Zimmer online. Now, I'm going to be taking a look at each track in turn. A few tracks have been released so far, so Gun Barrel, Matera, and Shouldn't We Get to Know Each Other First have already been released, so you can go ahead online and we'll listen to those to your heart's content. But I'm going to be taking a look at the soundtrack in full. We're going to go through track by track. I'm not going to play any track because the soundtrack has not been officially released yet, so I do not want to get copyrighted, my channel taken down. And obviously, I urge everyone to go out and buy the soundtrack when it does get released. I have had a pre-order for the soundtrack for almost 2 years now. So when the soundtrack arrives next Friday, I'll be very happy. So please do support the artists that create these wonderful soundtracks. And let me just start by saying the Hans Zimmer No Time to Die soundtrack is just a blessing for Bond fans. There is a lot to dig into here, so let's go through it track by track and I'll describe to you my feelings, my thoughts about what's going on in this scene, what I think will happen in this scene, and the track itself. Let me just start by saying I think the soundtrack overall is a love child for John Barry and David Arnold. The sound is definitely harkens back to those two composers. Thomas Newman, out with all his stuff. The Spectre soundtrack was a god-awful piece of poo. So here we go. Let's start off with Gun Barrel. Obviously, that's the first track. Pretty good Gun Barrel. Nice little twanging guitar there. Nothing to say. It's been released for about a year. Matera. That is track 2 on here. Matera is a lovely track. It's very John Barry-esque, with a bit of David Arnold strings in there. And obviously this track, spoilers, so if you do not want to hear a returning motif from a previous Bond film, just skip ahead. Okay, if you're gone, you don't want to hear it, then I'm not going to play it, but all the time in the world, that little motif comes back for this track. And it is, I cannot wait to see what is accompanying that scene. The All in the Time of the World track is a beautiful mix of violins and strings. Fantastic. I'm so glad Hans Zimmer brought it back. But that won't be the only returning motif we have in this soundtrack. Message from an Old Friend is track 3. Now, I think this is going to be the Matera Chase. So from the trailers we can see that Bond is in the DB5, but I think the chase actually begins way before we see Bond in the DB5. I think we see that bit when he's on the bridge, he jumps off the bridge. That's in this track. It's a very rip-roaring. It's got that heartbeat sense to it, like Hans Zimmer style, those strings, those horns, you know. And there's a great bit, big crescendo towards the end of this track where it gets your heart going. It's very Inception style music. It's really good. What else can I say about this track? Just great action set piece track. Track 4, Square Escape. Now obviously the only thing we can assimilate this track with is a square and he's escaping. Now in the trailers we see the Aston Martin gets cornered in a square in Matera, and I assume this track follows on from that, and it is a great track. It's the first time we hear the Bond theme in any sort of capacity in the soundtrack, and it gets your blood pumping. It just does get your blood pumping, and I can't wait to sit in the cinema and watch that Aston Martin car chase with this music accompanying. It is going to get people, you know, settled in for an awesome pre-title sequence. Track 5, Someone Was Here, is your bog standard Hans Zimmer track where it uses a bit of that white noisy kind of thing, and There's a little bit of a forgettable track. It's just sort of that background music, also where there's going to be dialogue. Nothing really much to say there. Not What I Expected is track 6. Another track that's kind of forgettable. Not really forgettable, but just, you know, probably used for a dialogue piece. What Have You Done? That's a soundtrack that a track that I think maybe might accompany Rami Malek's Safin, the main villain of this film. Maybe revealing part of his plan, or maybe revealing his character. The next track, Shouldn't We Get to Know Each Other First, is it has a nice bit of Bond theme on the guitar played on this, and I think maybe that's where we first get to see maybe Anna de Armas's character, or Nomi, played by Lashana Lynch, the new 00. One of my favourite tracks next is Cuba Chase. Now that was, if you listen to the No Time to Die podcast, Hans Zimmer spoke about this track. We got to hear a little bit of a snippet of this track, and it is a great track. It's probably going to be a track that I will keep listening to over and over again. It's got a bit of Bond theme in there, and it mixes the Bond theme with a Cuba kind of style, and it's going to be a good action sequence. This there is a sort of Bond theme motif that Hans Zimmer brings back for 3 tracks. This sort of like dun 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 dun, but he kind of puts his Hans Zimmer kind of style on it. I think you guys are going to really like it when you hear it. Yeah, Cuba Chase, fantastic track, really good track. I think it's going to be a really fun action sequence. Back to MI6. Now I assume this is where we'll see the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, my favourite James Bond car, and obviously Bond returning to MI6, returning to London. Good bit of Bond theme in there with the twanging guitar with that track. Good to Have You Back. Now I think it is. You heard a little bit there. This is a very special track in my heart. Spoilers. You're gone. First, I don't want to hear. This track is Good to Have You Back. It is the On Her Majesty's Secret Service theme. Hans Zimmer brought that theme back for No Time to Die. Just amazing. Just fantastic. I mean, it's something you'd expect from someone like David Arnold, not Hans Zimmer, to hear that iconic da-da-da back. It's, oh, what a track. Lovely track. Then we have Lovely to See You Again. Now I assume this track might be relating to meeting Q again, Q and Moneypenny. Not much to say about that track really, just a box standard dialogue track. The next track, Home. This is a really interesting track, and I can't really denote what might be going on here, because it's basically an instrumental for the Billie Eilish song No Time to Die, with a really good choir section in there. Really, really interesting track. Maybe we can tell that maybe there might be a split up between Madeline Swan and Bond in this film. Maybe that's where they meet again for the first time. I don't really know, but it's a really lovely track. Norway Chase is next. Norway Chase is a bit of a disappointing track. It's just basically just sort of noise, really. There's a lot of chase sequences, I can assume, in this film, so this has not really got a lot of Bond theme in it. It's just your bog standard Hans Zimmer, strings, horns. Not that there's anything wrong with that. The next track, Gearing Up. Now this is sort of I was expecting this track to be quite a Bond theme heavy, but it's not really that Bond theme heavy. It's just sort of, I can assume it's your bog standard, you know, they're getting ready to go and, you know, Nomi and Bond in that glider. They're getting ready to infiltrate Safin's base, so that's what I assume. Poison Garden is next. Now this is a really interesting track. It's quite really. He brings out his strings here, Hans Zimmer. He's got his strings out for this one, and it's something's happening here that's quite unnerving. It's quite an unnerving track. It really represents Safin's character quite well. So I really wonder what is happening here. Maybe someone's dying here. I don't know what's really going on. I don't want to speculate. The Factory. Now this is a good track. The Factory is a good track. It's what the Factory is. We don't know. But it's got a little bit of silent sections with strings and that ticking motif that Hans Zimmer has used previously in Dunkirk, which is a great soundtrack. Yeah, really interesting to see what's going on there. I don't know, but it has a little bit of action, a little bit of dialogue. Slow it down a little bit of dialogue. Interesting to see. I'll Be Right Back, which is another track, and that is quite an action-heavy track. We get a little bit of Bond theme in that track as well. It gets your blood pumping. I assume this will be quite an action-heavy scene. Opening the Doors. Now, this track was interesting because it's quite, it's a short track, but it's really loud, really intense kind of track. Really weird. It's these last few tracks on the list, on the soundtrack, I just can't tell what might be happening then. But it's really intense and quite emotional at times, especially this final track on the soundtrack, Final Ascent. This is going to be a really interesting track. Spoilers ahead. Well, I'm going to predict what might be happening in this scene, so if I am right, this could be potential spoilers. But it's a very sad track. Really sad. Reminds me of Time from Inception. I'll Be Right Back, kind of... The track I'll Be Right Back, sorry I mentioned, it's a lot like The Dark Knight. It's a lot like the Dark Knight music. So if you like your Dark Knight, your heavy violins, your heavy trombones, then you'll love this track. But the final track, Final Ascent, is really interesting. I don't know if Bond's actually going to bite the bullet, kick the bucket in this film, but it's really quite an emotional